Welcome, friends, to our next installment of Whispers from Eternity interviews. I am so thrilled to be here with my friend Keshava Betts, who resides currently at Ananda Palo Alto and shares a wonderful Whispers from Eternity weekly class series. And we'll talk more about that. Welcome, Keshava.
Thank you, Sanjan.
Keshava, I didn't ask you this just a moment ago, but would you like to start with a prayer and just set the tone for
Oh, sure. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
dearest friend,
dearest friend,
beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, our friend Swami Kriyananda, we bow humbly before you all. Come into our hearts today. Help us to feel your sacred presence as the touch of peace, as the spark of inner joy. Help us to dissolve our little egos into that joy, and help us to bless all souls with thy sacred presence. Om. Peace. Amen.
Bless you, Keshava. That was wonderful. So I'm totally thrilled that you're here. Just for a little bit of background, and I'll get Keshava to just introduce himself, filling in some of the gaps. But on a personal note, I moved to Ananda Village in 2012. I'm not sure if we met before because I came a couple years, 2009, 2010, and spent some time there. But in 2012, I moved. I landed in the village Easter Sunday. And then we've had this kind of, we're in each other's worlds, but we haven't had, we haven't gone out personally, socially, but more in groups and satsangs. You've made a strong impression because you are a deep soul, and I've just been thrilled to see you've been to Ananda LA for some of your time. And actually, just very interestingly, Keshava, you did this wonderful video once where you, Keshava, just so you know, today we're talking about Whispers from Eternity. I'll just mention that, the answered prayers. But Keshava, Keshava is, if I was to, on some levels you can describe him, he's a trained actor, he's a musician, he's a lover of God, he's a real warrior. And I'll talk a little bit more about how much of a warrior, and also he will. But when you were in LA, you did this great video about I think it was a relationship, and it was kind of using the teachings. It was kind of like an acted moment, like this scene that was created. Can you remember it? We haven't spoken about it. I think it was like a couple people from the Ananda LA area, and something was going wrong with a relationship.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was wonderful because it was so creative, and I think really speaking to the moment, because it was taking the everyday issues of what people go through, and then how do we tune into them with the teachings. I love that.
Yeah, that was a fun project. That was I mean, that was a little time tunnel I had to go back through to remember that. That was actually the creative offspring of Clarity West's mind. She was the one who came up with that concept, and she was with us there at Ananda Los Angeles at the time, and just felt inspired to try and create a visual medium to express why the teachings could be helpful. And so, yeah, exactly like you said, it sort of shows someone, a seeker in their life, and basically that their life was unfulfilled and wasn't really panning out, and they were trying to find meaning, and they found that in meditation. And I happened to play that role of the seeker, if you will, but because it was sort of a silent film, there wasn't really any dialogue, so you don't hear me speak. I just sort of like do a bad job of relating to my girlfriend, and then
You did a
like,
great job. But
yeah.
I love that. I love that theme. I mean, of course, Clarity is such a great solo. So creative, and but Jay Shetty, the ex monk who has kind of works online, making wisdom go viral, has kind of made these sorts of videos that really impact people. I always feel it's something that would be great for Ananda to pick up again if ever someone was to do it. But I love you in that.
Yeah, I mean, creative expression of the spirituality seems like a natural evolution that
Mm.
will just begin to occur. I mean, just a few months ago, this is not at all in the realm of sincere video production, but we had a fundraiser here in Palo Alto, and because of COVID, we couldn't have like a bunch of people come into the temple and perform a skit. And so I just sat down and I thought, I'd like to film a skit because, using cameras and cheating angles, I could make a skit that would be charming and entertaining and also safe and responsible. But then because, never waste an opportunity, I also prayed to Master and I said, let's try and actually also let this express some spiritual idealism. And the funny thing is by the time the skit was finished, more people told me how touching it was than funny, even though my intention had for it to be largely humorous and farcical. And
I
so
think
I
I
think it's
watched it actually. I think I watched the skit. So that was actually. Thank you for reminding me of that as well. So yeah, just a wonderful way to touch people now. So and
yeah,
you're trained in that area, and so many people in Ananda, because of the plays, have such a strong passion for kind of acting and sharing and
yeah, yeah,
using.
and just the artistic expression is such a fast route to the heart's feeling, which is in a way what Whispers from Eternity does, just through the medium of poetry.
Mhm.
Poetry is such a, poetry as opposed to prose is so effective at awakening the heart.
Mhm.
Like I'll even notice sometimes when I'm sitting down to try and teach a class, I won't necessarily understand what I'm trying to say, but if I can get just like a line of poetry that inspires above,
Mhm.
then that single, and I'm sort of using that loosely, but a few poetic words can inspire an entire class topic for me because it just gets my heart moving.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think the arts will have a big part to play with that, and we see Master
yeah.
employing that in Whispers from Eternity and Swami in his plays and in his music. So, you know, all of Krishna's soldiers look like Krishna. And here we
Yes.
go.
And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention before we really dive into Whispers is just that the other thing that struck me when I moved to Ananda Village is just hearing this story of you kind of connecting with a vision of Master and yourself. And do you want to share a little bit about that? Because it really spoke to you being a warrior with Master, and that's really a lot of how I see you as this towering, deep, sensitive warrior of Master. So
Yes. Um, yeah, I did have an experience that um, made me believe that this is not my first incarnation following Yogananda, and that perhaps he had called me to a battlefield once or a few times in the past, as perhaps many of our fellow Guru Bhais feel the same.
mm,
Um, like we were sharing together before we went live, I actually look around at a lot of us and I often wonder, how many lifetimes have we all been together? How many times have we been friends? And, in this incarnation, perhaps we haven't had much time to socialize and connect, but, there is a soul remembrance there. And why? How? And, maybe there's that remembered bond that was forged through intense experience and a mutual dedication to a higher ideal and to our one God and to Guru and to King, perhaps in those incarnations. And so, like you said, I had an experience that was very transformative for me when I was about 16 or so. Um, the grace of God came into my life pretty overtly. And on New Year's Day, so I just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of this moment. On New Year's Day, 2011, I woke up and just the inspiration, the whisper from eternity floated into my head. And it just suggested to me, hey, why don't you start meditating twice every day?
wow.
And I thought, that sounds like a great idea. So I started meditating. I
And,
rolled up off the
And sorry to interrupt. So you had grown up at Ananda Village, just for our viewers.
That's correct.
So,
Yes. So I was born, as I like to say, born and bred in the briar patch. Like I grew up at Ananda Village. My parents are Kriyabans. All of my mentor figures pretty much have been Kriyabans and deep devotees. I learned how to play the cello from David Eby, who is a Kriyaban and a deep soul. I learned how to sing from Ramesha, who's another deep soul. Our nickname for Ramesha in Los Angeles was Sadhana Baba, because man, that guy can meditate. And, you know, I learned martial arts from Gopal Sims, who is a deep soul. Like, talk about a peaceful warrior.
wow.
That man is a tranquil lion. And so, anyway, it was a big part of my life, but I struggled uh, reconciling my own inner call towards spirituality and my desire to be popular in a worldly way and to be influential. And interestingly enough, when I was a younger boy, I always knew I was a disciple of Master's. I would look into his eyes and I would know that he was my guru. And some of my earliest memories are lying on my back outside, looking at the blue sky and singing to Krishna, asking when I die for Krishna to take me on his lap. And I didn't even know what that meant, but I knew that that's what I wanted. And, you know, as I grew older, I didn't understand that intensity of my heart's feelings. And in the face of the social circles I was in, I elected to hide that in the name of being able to fit in and be popular. And so I was sort of leading a bit of a double life, that I was in my heart really feeling like a devotee and wanting to pursue a life of God. But on the outward way, I was still trying to pursue outward success and things like that. Now, you know, I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek because I was 16, for heaven's sakes. But yet, New Year's Day rolls around. I get that whisper from eternity that just says, you should start meditating. And like you said, because I grew up at Ananda, that was no platitude. I knew how to do that. So I did. I just rolled up and I started practicing Hong Sa. And I practiced Hong Sa. I practiced meditation twice daily since. And just by the grace of God, it just has stuck. But that really began the first, that was the first snowball which began an avalanche in my life. And that, but that's the first snowball began to change my consciousness and began to refine me, of course, as meditation does. But then the real point of no return happened, which is all of this to say, to get to the story that you prompted me to tell, which is I went to Los Angeles at the time. And my mother and I were touring colleges to go to acting colleges. And while we were there, we visited Yogananda's shrines. So we went to Lake Shrine, we went to Mount Washington. And when we went to Mount Washington, I had been praying really, really intensely to Master, asking him to come and give me an insight and an answer to a question I had. And, you know, it was kind of, we talk about tense and relax, like tense with will, relax and feel. I was doing a lot of the tense with will and wasn't really relaxing and feeling so much. And so I really worked it at Mount Washington. And then we went to the crypt where Master's body is interred. And I think the sort of mystic magic that happened was I had no expectations, I had no desires, and I was able to really relax. And I share this just because I think this is something I need to remember for how to really draw inspiration, is that it is that balance of will and relaxation. But then when we got to the crypt, I just went and we meditated there for some time, actually, I think quite a long time. And then I felt inspired and I knelt down in front of the crypt. And the crypt, the headstone is about, I don't know, waist high or so, maybe 3 feet off the ground. And so I knelt in front of it and I placed my hands on the stone. And then I just felt to offer myself to Yogananda. And as I did that and I touched my forehead against the marble stone, it was just that for a moment I was transported. And I was no longer Keshava Betts in this body in Los Angeles in 2011, but I was me, but I was yet somebody else. And I just suddenly found myself in a whole different set of circumstances. And the whole thing lasted all of 2 seconds. It was just a few moments, but enormous amounts of understanding washed over me instantly. And it takes me much longer to describe what happened than actually what happened.
Right.
But basically, I suddenly found myself standing on a field, looking up this hillside, and there were two armies clashing. And I was in the midst of this fight, and I found myself looking at the two lines which were smashing into each other, and I was overcome suddenly with the terrifying fear that this was going to be the death of me.
Mm.
I was absolutely terrified, and there was mud in my shoes, the churned earth, there was blood, and just the whole deal. I could smell it. And then the fear was visceral. Uh, and as the fear was beginning to take over my body, I happened to glance down our line. And behind the front line, there was a group of horsemen. And astride one of those horses was a man without his helmet. And he was looking at the lines with such a look of indomitable will, of just this fierce power. And as soon as I looked at him, I was no longer afraid. And instead, I felt his courage come into me. And as when I looked at him, I knew that that man was my king. And I knew that I swore my life to him and that I would die for him if he asked it of me. And so suddenly the fear was gone. And I was instead filled with this tremendous courage and this love. And I turned once again back to the battle, determined to fight, win, or die trying. And that was it. And suddenly I found myself kneeling once again on the cold marble stones of the crypt in Los Angeles. And I heard a voice in my head. And it said to me, "See how you dedicated your life to me once before. Do so again."
Wow. My goodness. What a beautiful story. And what I loved is when we were just briefly discussing it before this interview broadcast, is just what were you saying? You were saying that you can tell if something was, it was truly an inspirational, super conscious moment, is if it actually changes your life. And from that point on, you were saying it really did change your life.
Night and day. I mean, how could I knew that that was a true experience. And I knew that that was Yogananda asking for my loyalty once again. And there was no half in or half out. It was on the spot. I gave him my unconditional, complete loyalty again.
Yeah.
And I sort of chuckle because I am charmed that the guru came to me in exactly the way I needed at the time I needed it. But I hear some stories of new disciples and like the courtship period of discovering if Yogananda is their guru and how sweet it is. And I laugh and I say, he came and grabbed me by the scruff of the neck. and he shook me and he said, "You're mine. Come home." Like, enough. 16 years was too long. It wasn't even 16. It was like 3 years of being a rebel, and that was too much. So, and I got recalled, and I am eternally grateful because that's who I am. So.
Yeah. Beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So now we come to whispers. Is there anything more you want to say, Nat, about yourself? How long have you been living in Palo Alto? And
Just a little over a year, about a year and 4 months.
And you're serving as ever in a community in various capacities, and whispers is one of them. Sharing about whispers and
exactly. It's been a great joy. Basically, I discovered I loved Whispers from Eternity because, on the back of it, Yogananda there's a quote of his that says, "There are three Bibles from which I draw my inspiration: the Christian Bible, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, and my Whispers from Eternity, which were given to me by God." I read that and I thought, should pay attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then so when was that, and when did you, I know, you, like I say, there's this amazing series that you've got every week. What day is it? Is it, what morning is
It's
it?
Friday mornings at
Friday.
8:15 to 8:45 Pacific Standard Time.
And it's Facebook Live, and
Facebook Live and on our live stream channel at Ananda Palo Alto. Yeah.
yeah, and just to say that once the recording goes up, as usual, for my guests, I put in links, and I'll put the link to the playlist for the 30, at the moment that's up there, 33 Whispers classes. There may be more, but the one that I linked on, it's got the recordings of all the 33 that you have.
Perfect. Yeah.
And of course, you can join Keshava on Facebook for Ananda Palo Alto every Friday morning as well. But what took you to this? What took you to this moment? When did you start to dive with that one particular whisperer, which is, I think it's the one that you shared in your first class. Is that right? Chisel Thou My Life, or was it?
That was, I think, the second poem I really took deeply.
Mhm.
The first one was Intoxicate Me with the Wine of Thy
Oh,
Love.
yeah.
Yeah, which is a lovely prayer. But it was just a number of years ago. I was in Los Angeles, and I'm not sure really how the thought came. I think I was perhaps reading. Sorry, there's a train going by.
That's like, we can't hear it. I can't hear it anyway.
Oh, okay, great. There is in the beginning of Whispers, Master Yogananda talks about needing to take each prayer really deeply and cracking open the words. You've probably shared this before, that he talks about like words are like seeds, and you have to crush the seed to get to the oil of inspiration. And growing up at Ananda and being a part of the ministry, and being at Sunday service every single week, hear a lot of whispers from eternity, but I only heard it once. And I began just getting hungry for, I want to crush the oil out of one of these prayers and really understand it for myself, and take it to the point where I could describe it to a room full of 100 people or to a 5-year-old. I want to know what that is about. And so I just threw open the book, and basically by the, just call it divine guidance or call it random selection, and it doesn't really matter. I found my way to that first one, Intoxicate Me with the Wine of Thy Love. And I memorized that prayer, and I prayed it very sincerely daily, as often as I could remember, for like 2-3 months. And I really felt it to be illuminating, and it taught me. I'm not at all saying I got to the heart of it, but it did reveal some of its inspiration. Probably it revealed the inspiration I was capable of receiving at the time. And then basically, I was so moved by that, I then chose another prayer. And as it happened, Drupada MacDonald, who's an astrologer and my mentor, he recommended that prayer, Chisel Thou My Life according to Thy design. And when he said that, I thought, I'm in. I know whispers can change me. So I went in and I found that prayer. And at the time, my life really was getting chiseled. I was under stern order from the divine to be, obeying the necessities of the moment. And so it was just such a wonderful way to adjust my psychology away from victim consciousness and into being actually grateful for the chisel of the divine to make me into the soul that I want to be and that I am in my heart of hearts. So that was definitely one of my favorites, and I returned to that often. And then from there, I happened to continue that process. I'd take a prayer for about a month or 2 or 3, and sometimes longer. The longest I took one prayer was for about a year, and I did that, and I was doing that up until I started this Whispers from Eternity broadcast, and now I take a prayer for a few days and then I have to talk about it.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that, because as I'm starting to lead things, in the beginning for me was also, doing it over a period of over a period of time with one, but then you're kind of, I'm reading different ones and just trying to take it in deeply. So
Yeah.
I can really feel that. So when you worked with them and you were taking that one, were you, I've got something in my throat. Were
Yeah, I'm
you
actually going to turn on my light. Forgive me. The
okay?
sun is setting. Okay.
Did you how you worked with it? Did you do it in your kind of sadhana? Was it outside of that? Was it a mixture of that? How did you? Because what's nice in doing these interviews is just seeing how everyone works with them differently. And
Yeah. Well, so because I did do some training as an actor and spent some years in there digging apart text and really trying to take words and transcribe them into direct experiences of the heart, was familiar to me. That is acting 101 and maybe 101, 102. But
and you share that in
but
your class, which I really love as well. At least in those beginning classes that you about.
yeah, that was more the focus in those beginning classes. Maybe it's time for me to get back to my roots here. But
Oh,
yeah,
I mean, how you're doing it back then and now is great. So whatever's,
yeah, there's maybe a natural ebb and flow in life. But to get back to the question you asked me, I would take it uh, sentence by sentence, even word by word, and try to really contemplate and understand. I would read the whole prayer to understand the bhav.
Mhm.
And then I would take it moment by moment and really try and understand, why did he choose that word? Like when you break apart like a piece of Shakespeare's text, it's always good to ask oneself, why did he use that word instead of one of the other six that he could have? What does this word say that the others don't? Or what does the vibration possess that, what vibration does it convey? And so I like to do that with Master's words because, of course, his words are impregnated with so much spiritual power. And so by really trying to do that, like for example, that prayer, intoxicate me with the wine of thy love, that is a very descriptive word, intoxicate.
Mhm.
And like that's not, that's very different from saying, let me feel the niceness of your love, or let
Yes.
me feel your love in my heart. But when you feel the intoxicating quality of love, does that mean that you feel it in your body? Does that mean that it changes the way your mind works? Does that mean that like you can't almost function because of the intensity of that inner experience? Does that mean that you lose like control of your outer body because of the sincerity of that inner absorption? I don't know, but it's really interesting. And
Yeah.
for me to pull it apart and say he used that word intoxicate, and we hear about like the wine of the mystics, and it just makes my mind wonder and my heart wonder, what would it be like to actually be drunk with God? And
You know,
it's funny, on that note, I'll just really quickly say, and then I'm sorry to cut you off,
no,
but
no, 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 you carry on.
I briefly had a career in carousing and some more extracurricular entertainment activities when I was a teenager. And when I stopped all that post my experience with Master, and some of my friends of that feather would say things like, "Oh, you've changed so much. I can't believe how different you are. You're nothing like us anymore." And I was flabbergasted because I said, "No, I'm exactly the same as I've always been. I'm
Wow.
looking for exactly the same things. I've just found a better way."
Wow.
And so, like, when I would meditate and get drunk on God's love, that was more enjoyable than those other
Absolutely.
experiences. That's the only reason I didn't do them.
I mean, it's
So,
so funny that you say that because Master in the introduction is sharing with us that these words are drunk with God. And I always and to me, whispers from eternity, I've shared this before with everyone, is just that it's really the divine romance for me. It's kind of
mm,
showing you how to love God. And it's kind of, as yogis, we're renunciates, and so we're giving up many things. And here we are, we get to get drunk with God and kind of have the divine romance. We kind of get so much more back. But what always comes into mind, and I think I've mentioned this before, is just there's a scene in the movie Awake, the Life of Yogananda, and that's when Yogananda is in India and he's surrounded by devotees and he's kind of stumbling, and you can tell he is drunk with God. He's intoxicated just with this divine experience. It's well worth, I've discussed this with Jitendra, my friend, from the village. Just you can really see that intensity of drunkenness. And then I just remember hearing, I think it's mentioned with Swami and also from one of his disciples, how in the beginning this particular disciple who became a monk with Master in the last years, he didn't understand English very well, and he was kind of watching Master as he was interacting with people, and Master gave him this touch of just intoxicated bliss, and he'd be walking down the streets in Hollywood or in LA, and people were disgusted at him because he looked like he was literally drunk. And that's the power that Master has. I always find it very interesting when people kind of, you know, that's the kind of the goal with meditation, to get that completely, like you lose yourself in that inner experience. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, people think that you know, meditation or the spiritual life, it lacks intensity, but it's quite the opposite. It's the very zenith of intensity of inner experience.
Yeah. So continue on. So you kind of you use that kind of dissection of going into the
Yeah.
words, really kind of diving into it. And then,
Yeah. So I would sit and try and parse apart the words, try and penetrate into the words and the meaning and the vibration that he was conveying. And then I would sometimes take like a few sentences or a paragraph and I would repeat them with deep feeling and try and conjure up all the chitta of my heart and focus it through the magnifying glass of those words and try and magnetize that living experience to myself. And then I would do that a few times, and then I'd perhaps read the entire prayer and just try and feel the whole experience from start to finish. And then, like you said, yes, I would take that before my meditations and I would try and meditate on that quality or on some of the words. But then I would also, because I'm always looking for ways to keep myself out of trouble, you know, keep my mind in the right ways. And so, you know, I would take that prayer. I really like to focus, especially on those first waking moments. And so, what's been a long practice for me now, I mean, I shouldn't say that long, but a few years, is as soon as I wake up, all the way until I'm actually starting my formal sadhana, I like to be praying, either whispers or japa or something like that. But I would use these whispers from eternity to give my mind a real focal focus point, to draw my heart upwards in those first moments of my day. And then, you know, in down moments, like when you're driving in the car and you're stuck in Los Angeles or you're on hold on the phone, and just mull over those words and try and give my heart something meaningful to do. And then after, you know, I would try and memorize them so I could just recite the poem at will or when needed. And then, you know, like you are, I'm sure, enjoying, then all of a sudden, like the whispers, especially when you begin having a few more kind of in your awareness, they begin sort of sprinkling certain lines in your psyche at different appropriate times throughout the day. And like they really become like answers, well, answered prayers, I guess. Like the lines themselves are the answered prayers. So
yeah.
that's a bit how I would do it. I would take it for some duration, and then after a certain point, when I felt like I had done my due diligence and I felt inspired, I would pick another prayer and commit to that one.
Yeah. So amazing. And what I love in the classes is that you also, you know, you're giving these inspirations, these insights into the whispers themselves. You know, it's evolved now that I don't think you did this in the beginning, but you now play music at the beginning, which either a chant or the cello, which, you know, just again adds, I mean, I loved it in the beginning without those things, but it's really a kind of a whole event within itself. And just like, you know, offering some of the tips that you have picked up. You were sharing about your time in LA when Narayan was in the shower, and I think he was it was an intense time of your life. And I don't know if you want to continue on. It's kind of saying a little bit of what you're saying now, but just you'd kind of picked up this habit in the morning of.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will share that. I'll tell that story just because it's so charming to me, if and I hope charming to others. But yeah, I was living. It was my great blessing to live with Narayan and Dharma Devi for about 2 years, um, and we were very close. We worked a lot together, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Like long hours every day, almost every day. And we were very ambitious. After some time of a more relaxed period, we opened a few of the other satellite centers in Los Angeles. And so we had a very busy calendar. And it was just tough pace. And, after like the 28th consecutive 12-hour day kind of thing, Narayan and I woke up to go lead meditation starting at, we had to be there at, I think, 6:30 or something. And so we were getting up at 5:30 after going to bed at midnight. And I just remember my alarm goes off and I sort of feel like I'm a zombie clawing myself out of bed. And, I'm sure we've all felt this, but when I get a little overtired and I've been pushing with too much of my egoic will, I begin to feel burned, like my nervous system feels burned. That's the best description. And inflamed. I feel like inflamed and burned. And I can especially feel it around my eyes. And, my eyes begin to get bloodshot and stuff. And I sort of drug myself out of bed, but I knew I was like, I can't let Narayan down. He's going. It's cold. It's dark. I can't let him go alone. So I drug myself out of bed and I opened the door, and we both opened our doors at the same time. We sort of bleary eyed looked at each other. And I'm sure I looked just as bad as he did, but he did not look good. And he was kind of disheveled and his eyes were bloodshot. And he looks at me, smiles, good morning. And then he was so genuine. And then he jumps in the shower, and I could hear him through the door. And he was just constantly praying to God. And his prayer, I think it is a prayer from one of the Gospels. It was, today is the day you have made for me. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day you have made for me. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I'm sitting out there, rejoice and be glad in it. And I thought, I'm impressed. Okay, I can try my best to rejoice and be glad in this. And there's a certain joy of the trenches. You talked about
Yes.
being a warrior. There's a love of getting to share that with someone else. And he yeah, I guess I picked it up in part from him, because he met that day and that adversity with such an adamantine prayer, a sincere but
Yes.
unrelenting prayer, that I thought, I like that. I'm going to learn to do
Yeah.
that.
So I just love that you share these sorts of tips throughout, and just so much depth in it. Um, do you have are there any ones that is a particular favorite? As I know the one that you return to, or is it really a moving and evolving? With
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it changes based on the soul cry of my heart. That there was a time when I really felt like I was um, beset on all sides by, we've talked about being a warrior perhaps in past incarnations. I felt like Master put me in the middle of enemy territory and surrounded me on all sides, and it was brutal and unfair, and I was not winning. And so I took the prayer, be thou the general in my invasion of the continent of ignorance. And it begins, I don't care if I am torn to bits and cut and bloody and wounded and pierced by arrows, and with my bleeding body, I will still cry out for thee. And that's what I needed at the time, because I was barely hanging on.
yeah.
But now I've relaxed away from that. My circumstances have changed. And, like I mentioned, the prayer I took for the longest duration was actually about a year. And that was a very simple prayer. And it's the prayer demand for wisdom. And it
Okay.
is so simple.
Hmm.
Uh, well, I can't even remember it now.
I know where it is. I think it's around.
Father,
Is it about bliss?
thou art wisdom. I am wisdom. Thou art bliss. I am bliss.
Yeah.
That's it. And I prayed that every single day, and like every moment I could remember, because I became so desperate to want to know what wisdom was.
Hmm.
And uh, I just kept at that prayer until I felt like I began to know what wisdom was.
Mm.
And so that prayer was very meaningful to me. The one that actually really spoke to me recently that I heard in a very new light, um, was the poem at the end. I was made for thee alone.
Yes.
I got to read that, and I really resonated with that. Of course, another prayer that I have continually go to, especially the second half, is God's boatman. I
Mm.
want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show all my sleeping brothers how they too may free themselves. And that is a prayer that just,
That's
you
beautiful.
know, is dear to my heart. And the first part of that prayer is so moving.
Mm.
So yeah.
It really is. I keep saying beautiful a lot today. I often go through phases of saying words, but it just is such so much beauty in this book and in these prayers. The interesting thing when you were talking about the nerves, and just to pick up on the point of this book really is giving you the ability to kind of face life in its various forms and adopt the right attitudes. There's actually a prayer for healing for healing overused nerves, which is
Yeah.
incredible. This master's ability to tune into what we need.
Yeah. It's just spectacular. And that's, I've heard, I don't remember where, but that Swami said that he felt that this was really a handbook on right attitude. And
Absolutely.
that statement alone, I think, is a gold mine to ponder, because so much of the success on spiritual path is right attitude. And
Yeah.
so we're always asking, what is the right attitude to take in this moment? And to think that this book is the way to discover the right attitude under every circumstance. What a gift to the devotee.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that comes up in the introduction is that really, as you were saying, uh, and just that Master was really saying, take these words and make them your own. And one of the things that I really loved in a recent class that you did, you actually shared the prayer at, I think it was Eventide. Uh,
Mm,
that you shared, and what's so wonderful, because actually I go through an array of different prayers that, some that speak to me, but my actual kind of more consistent prayer that I really love is prayer at Eventide.
mm,
But it's interestingly, it's the version, uh it's not in the book in its entirety. It's Master actually says it during the CD, songs
oh,
from the
yeah.
heart. And when I was kind of tuning into prayer at dawn, prayer at noon, prayer at eventide, prayer at night, I just had this remembrance that he had spoken those prayers in that CD. And anyway, so there's this longer version on that, and it's that version which is in part in this Whispers from Eternity, ending at the line, "Come, I crave, I come, I what is it?
I
Come,
crave, I yearn for
crave,
thee.
I yearn for thee." Yes. And what's so interesting is when you hear Master say it on that CD, and then you come to your class on it, there's just such a depth to both of them, really deep, but a very kind of different. There's a kind of a difference in the quality of that interpretation of it, and
Mm,
it kind of just spoke to me because Master is like the warrior. I think that you yourself have been like, just really coming at you. The torrent of devotion and bliss is just flowing through, and that comes through in that prayer of Eventide. And then when you share it, it's just a very sweet but just as powerful, and it just speaks to that everybody does have a different kind of
yeah.
experience of it. Do you want to, I don't know if you want to say anything on that, or just
Yeah.
my observation of it, but
Well, I think that's a beautiful observation. And I mean, of course, every great work can be seen from many different angles and can be meaningful to in different ways. But what actually strikes me is it seems to me that that is the way I interpreted the prayer, because it is what is appropriate for me now.
Yeah.
That in my individual case, actually trying to cultivate more of the soft inner receptivity and relaxation has actually been a real point of concerted growth. And so for me, when I read that prayer, I see that attitude coming out to me. But interestingly, Master modeled something else, and so that's just very interesting to me. It goes right back to the idea that these prayers actually hold right attitude, because when I looked at that prayer, it almost moved me to tears, because I felt just so directly part of what Master was trying to teach me in that way.
Yeah. And what I think, have you ever listened to the one on Songs from the Heart?
Yeah, I have listened to those before, yes.
I mean, what I love about this particular prayer is that it's, I mean, I guess each prayer is very unique, but Master is really kind of speaking to the infinite in a very, very kind of personal way. He's asking God to receive my devotion, receive as in this longer version. And in fact, how I kind of work with it now, I mean, I don't do the whole prayer every day, but when I actually come to communion after I've done my kriyas and my, my mudra after that, I actually use some of the wording from it because
Mm,
it evokes such devotion in me. I really encourage people, if they've not listened to it, and there's this one point in the prayer where Master's going full strength, as often is the case, and then he stops, and it's just when he kind of says, infinite beloved, let me just think for a moment, and he's saying, thou hast created us against our will, free us, this is our prayer from our hearts. And then he stops and he just talks to Divine Mother very sweetly, and he says, beloved, listen to our prayers. And there's such a contrast between this torrent and this moment where it's just so subtle. And so
yeah.
for me, what I often do, as you were kind of saying before, was just I draw some of the lines that really inspire me from these whispers, and I bring them into daily life, as you were saying, but also in meditation. And it's really been very profound to use it in that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And we can learn a lot by even just how Master reads that prayer. I was fascinated to read Master talking about how to develop magnetism. Then he talked about in any polar situations, there's a current of magnetism, that left and right, there is magnetism, up and down, male and female. But then he also said loud and soft. And so he said, when are speaking, if you can vary the loudness and the softness of your voice, it helps to create magnetism. And we've all seen this simply, if you've ever been in that college lecture with the person who drones and talks like this, everybody falls asleep. But
right.
people who vary their vocal pitch and who vary the delivery, it's much more engaging. And so it's also beautiful as my actor brain to hear Master does that. And of course, we've all heard him do that in his lectures and talks if we've ever heard him. One moment he's speaking so loud, it's clipping the microphone. And then the next he's whispering, and it sucks you into that place of stillness with him.
Yeah. How have you found that kind of whispers has touched you? I mean, I guess the challenge with this question, I find, of course, is that we're doing so many things. We're meditating, we're serving, we're tuning in different ways. But how do you feel that whispers has really touched you and changed you in
Mm.
your period of working with it personally and leading it as a class?
That's a really excellent question. What One of the things that just springs to mind that I'll share is this book has begun to talk to me now.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I can find answers in it when I need them. And it's even got to the point where people will come to me, perhaps needing a counseling or something like this. And I do some work as an astrologer now. And that will mean that I will look at somebody's horoscope, and I've never met them. I don't know who they are. And for an hour and a half, I'm supposed to render spiritual counsel. And that's a tall order, and it's frankly terrifying. But by the but by the grace of God, I guess it seems to be working. But this book has really become a cornerstone of my practice as an astrologer, because I know that this book is the remedy to so much misunderstanding and to wrong attitudes. And that means that this book is the remedy to so much suffering. And so what I often try to do when I'm looking at somebody's horoscope is I try to meditate and ask Master, which of these prayers do they need right now? And it has started becoming a little bit uncanny that it seems to be just what is needed. There was a few instances where and it's so touching to see when these things work, but I was talking with this one woman who had gone through, I didn't know it at the time, but looking at her horoscope, I felt she really needs this particular prayer. And then when we were talking together, it turned out that the conditions of her circumstances were such that it made the prayer literally exactly what she needed to hear. And I was so grateful, because I said, as it happens, I think this prayer would be really effective for you. And I just pulled open this prayer and I read it, and she just started weeping. And she said, I can't tell you how meaningful that is to me. And it was such a treasure to be able to just be the middleman and to be able to hand out a gem to her, just like Drupada handed to me when he suggested that I pick up this book. And so it would seem that the book now is able to, perhaps because of the energy that I have put out to try and attune myself to it, now it just talks to me a little bit when I need it to. And so that's a definite way that I've noticed it impacts my life and other people. But another thing that it just really has done is it has helped my heart to love. That's really what I would say. I mean, I find when I really get to the place where, at least to the best of my ability, I can actually meet these prayers as they are. And not, I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes if I just pick up this book and read, it's like I am skipping the stone of my mind across the surface of these prayers. I'm not really absorbing them into my heart. But when I really pause and let myself calm my mind, calm my heart, and be receptive to these prayers, they are like almost unbearably sweet, almost unbearably sweet. And I remember trying to prepare for class a few months ago, and I popped open the book and I read 3 sentences and I had to close the book. And because I couldn't even read anymore. And then I flipped over, like I found that in one of the broadcasts we did, it was such a blessing. I read the prayer invocation to Krishna. And the first words are, "O Krishna, Lord of Hindustan." And you could say those words 1,000 times, but when you read those words out of this book, I said those words and I literally thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it through this prayer, because I said those words and I could feel his blessings. And that just stops the heart in its tracks. And so that's what the book has given me. That's what these prayers have given me, is an open heart.
So well articulated, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. What was very interesting is that when Jitendra, I did a satsang with Jitendra, and also a great lover of this book, and he was saying the same thing. It becomes more than just a book. It kind of, it's really from the heart, and it's just for myself also. It's really just open the heart. I just actually had a testimonial. Someone from Germany has been watching these Whispers interview series, and they were inspired. And really, I'm doing them. I'm kind of doing an online Whispers retreat, and it's kind of helping me to learn different ways of how people tune into whispers. But it's also just mainly to share whispers with as many people as possible, and inspire them to pick up the book. And this lady from Germany had kind of said that they were inspired to pick up whispers, and they just started reading and they started to weep. They were so kind of feeling overflowing with devotion. And so it is such a deeply touching book. We're coming towards the end here. I kind of, maybe I have I mean, I could go on, but I actually wanted I haven't asked you this. I have asked my friend Jitendra about this already, but I have a real passion for this. I feel, as you do, for myself, I feel that I want to take this work, and I've spoken with Jyotish and Devi about taking it outside of Ananda to different people, etc. And I feel that retreats are a wonderful way for people at Ananda, outside of Ananda, to explore whispers from eternity. And I've actually already started speaking with the meditation retreat near the village. We haven't booked anything because of the pandemic and everything's closed down, but I was going to book a weekend at the end of the year, and then also a week next year, either March or April, to lead a retreat in person at the meditation retreat. I've invited Jitendra to come and lead part of that with me. Would you be interested in coming and leading part of the
Absolutely.
retreat? And I think, yeah, I could just see you just being such a dynamic part of it, and just I can tell you're just, I think our viewers know, and by watching this series, how on fire you are, how touched you are. It's a real blessing to share this with you, for us to hear. The other thing that I wanted to say, so yes, I'm going to put you down there. I'll be in contact about that, Keshava. And the other thing, what was I going to say before I lose that thread? Gosh, I just had it. Oh, I've lost it for the moment. Any thoughts for people just how to dive into whispers, or any kind of ways of any kind of words of wisdom or other experiences you want to share about whispers from eternity, while I try and remember and tune into that thought?
I think all I would say is pray with sincerity, and pray as if you were talking to your very best friend who already understands you. Because I think perhaps one of the only pitfalls I could see someone falling into picking up a book like this is getting tricked by the poetry into thinking that it was a formal relationship or like a tight collared, preconceived way of approaching God. But as you said, Yogananda said, you want to take this until you become the poem, until the words become yours. And maybe that means that the words change slightly to become natural from your heart. But that would be the number one thing. I think, based on my limited experience and from listening to others, people don't go deep in prayer because they hold God at arm's length, and they hold their own heart at arm's length. But I think learning to share vulnerably with God is a great skill of a devotee. And that's, yeah.
I really so deeply agree with that, because I think one of the other things that I've got from it myself also is just this very personal, deep personal relationship with God through whispers from eternity. The one thing I was going to share was that, just on your point about kind of tuning into whispers as in astrology, and I know Drupada well. He's such a great soul warrior himself.
Definitely.
But just how you tune into that with astrology, and Jitendra was kind of sharing how he has this practice of kind of saying a whisper for people, and these are kind of he tunes in and starts to do a prayer for someone. I've asked him for more details about it. I haven't got it back yet, but at some point I'll hear from him, and I want to share more of those details. But interestingly, I sometimes massage people, and I was massaging yesterday in Reno, and I just had this, and I was just working with whispers, and I think I got that inspiration from Indra sharing, you're sharing about astrology. And I've always had this thought that you could almost have like, not like a confessional, but you could kind of, when you know the whispers well, you could say to someone, well, you know, do this whisper 10 times and do this.
Oh yeah.
This and but I do feel that, joking aside on that, I do feel that once you really have tuned into it like you have, that you do get a sense of, and an ability and a connection where you can open it up, or you know which prayers to tune into. So thank you for your inspiration today.
Yeah.
That's not, that actually isn't an alarm for the end of the interview.
Time's up.
But it's so aptly timed.
Time to go meditate.
Yeah. So I look forward to at some point sharing Whispers with you. I thoroughly look forward to tuning into Whispers with you again. I have this online Whispers from Eternity retreat this coming Saturday. The details will be below the video. And you can sign up, and I'll also be releasing a video tomorrow where I kind of talk a little bit. I've interviewed lots of people. I just talk a little bit about my own experience and a couple of things that we'll tune into. We're going to pick one whisper, maybe two, but I think just one whisper during that retreat. And we're going to pick from page 15, where Master says that you can repeat it mentally with concentration, or he says in parentheses, out loud in congregations. And so we're kind of tuning into that aspect during this retreat, and we'll be meditating on it. So
that sounds really powerful, Sanjan.
Yeah, and it's a total experiment. We'll see how it goes, and hopefully you'll be part of it. And in next year when we do a in-person Whispers from Eternity retreat. So
wonderful.
Thank you so much, Keshava. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
God bless everyone.